Today, we will be talking about forms and how you can go about creating your own form templates. Once you're in the Forms module itself, you will see the Templates section. Note this is only available to either managers or admins based on what setting you've got on your particular database. Once you're in Templates, you'll be able to see all existing templates. To create a new template, it's just at the top. But before we get to this, just some general best practice would be if you're updating an existing template, it is always best to duplicate it before you make those changes. Especially if you're making large changes. If you're just adding another option in a combo box as an example, that will be fine to update an existing template. The reason for this is that you will be affecting all of the forms that have been created under that template if you edit it. So if you've got 6 months worth of data with a project referenced in a particular field that you then delete, that project reference will be deleted from all of those past forms. So always best to duplicate. To duplicate an existing template, you would just be going into the existing form. So we'll just go to bid no bid and then press the duplicate button at the top. This will then ask for the name of the duplicated template. So we'll just go V2. Hit save, and that has created an exact duplicate of your previous template. Make sure you have actually got the two templates and you have duplicated it before making changes for the reason mentioned earlier. To create a brand new template, as mentioned before, just go into the template section and click the plus at the top of the page. It'll then ask for the name of the template, which will just go test template and hit save. Once you've created the template, you'll have a completely blank template because it's just been created. So within here, before I start creating anything of substance, you'll see the options along the top, which are the field types that can be added. So question is generally a yes, no, or yes, no, not applicable, or there's a concept of punch items as well. So if I go yes, no, that will add the field. The options in this case, as we mentioned, are yes and no, and the label is just what you want that question to be that you are responding yes or no to. So I'll just put question 1. Also, whilst we're in here, you can change these options to add custom items. So you could change this no to fault detected, and the 1 to be okay. You'll also notice that there is 1 and 0, which will correspond with the color of the option when you select it. So if I click into this and go to preview, you'll see that that question is added now, and OK is green, fault detected is red. There are other options as well, such as orange is 2, etc. Before I move on from that, punch items is a different concept whereby you can have a follow-on action if they select punch. So that might be if I'm detecting a defect, I would press punch and it would take me to a separate section which can be allocated similar to a task. Not as commonly used, but there is merit for it in some situations. The next section is combo box. So between this there is 2 major differences. One which is a list of options already based on modules of records. So contacts module has a bunch of records. So if I select contacts, it will list me all of the contacts from the database. I can go one step further in saying I want to only have contacts selectable from certain groups. So key example, if I go to employees, it will only pull me the contacts from the employees group. I'll just go employee name. The difference with the other options is combo box and multi-select. So combo box is a single selection, whereas a multi-select is multiple selections of items within the list of options. So if I go label in here, list of options, and then I type in A, B, C, D, E. So you'll probably notice that I'm putting in what's called a pipe character to separate my options. That is just what is required to split my options. So if I go back to here and go preview again, this will be slightly different in that I've got a list of options. This can only be selected once, etc. Employee name was the example we had before, so these are all the contacts that match that employee group. If I select that, this is essentially a multi-select combo box as well. So if I was to change this to a multi-select, you'll obviously see the difference. Then you've got a text entry, so you can have validations on what kind of fields you want, which will be particularly for mobile. It's a lot easier to control what type of keyboard you have for input on mobile than it is on a physical keyboard on a computer. So with that said, if you go to numeric, that will be prompting on the mobile device to only allow numbers to be entered. So if you look at other options, you'll have the option to have a scan code option, which will allow when you click into this field, the camera will display and prompts for you to scan a barcode, which will enter what barcode has written against it against the form. There's also a nice option which has just been recently added, which is a read-only field, which will allow you to have text only that is only visible as it reads and not editable. Dates box. So there's a concept of date only field, time only field, date time, and then duration. So for this, I'll just add 2 quick examples. So date/time, and another one which is duration. So what this will then give me is date and time will give me dates or calendar entry, and then the time is the time entry. This will look obviously slightly different on mobile, but it works the same way. Duration is just hours and minutes. If I put 5 hours there, that will reflect 5 hours. So commonly used if, say, I'm wanting to get the duration between 2 dates, or date time fields. So common example is a start time and a finish time. Start time might be 9 AM, finish time 5, so therefore your duration will be 8 hours. Then it flicks into photos. So photos is a prompt to upload an image. So that would be from your camera roll, taking the image, etc. So there's different default actions that you can select. So if I go, which is within here. So the different options are default, which will give me the option of what I want to input, which will give you pick file, take image, etc. A combination of all of the items below. Start camera will be as soon as you hit take picture, it will open the camera app on your device. Scan document is the same, only that will not shrink the file. So you would use that functionality heavily if you were wanting them to provide an image of a docket as opposed to a site overall image. Whereas you would use start camera. Pick file is, as it says, pick file. Default high res equals the same as default, but if they choose start camera, it keeps the photo at high resolution. Drawing allows you to put a stagnant image in that you can allow markup directly to. So if I go body map, I've only ever seen this used as a concept of a body map on, say, an incident form, whereby somebody would circle on a body map where the injury occurred. That's an example. The next option is an image, which is just a static image. and just go Kai. That will show image. So if I preview this, that will show those two different items. On mobile, this one would be editable. With the other one, it's just a static image. So this is typically used if you wanted to display a matrix or some reference material. By matrix, I mean, say, a risks matrix connected to a safe work method statement as an example. Button. A lot of these aren't heavily used. The key ones that I use is new subform, which allows you to create a, as it sounds, subform connected to the main form. So what that means is if you have got a form where I need to get 20 people's signature, you will be able to fill out as many needed for those 20 by pressing the button 20 times. Whereas if we didn't have a subform, you'd have to list in this form that we're creating here the same fields replicated 20 times, which is far from ideal. Especially when you're filling out a form where a site only requires the need for 2 people to sign. You've just got a whole lot of extra records to scroll through. The next one is custom code, which we don't expect you to understand or play with, but this would be where you would add code that would run on pressing that button in the form. Label allows you to set up similar to that read-only field concept, but it displays differently on mobile and web. Score is used to show a representation of a tally, we'll call it. So we use it with our systems for risk rating score. So it could be based on the selection of your likelihood and your consequence between 1 to 5. It gives a score of a rounded number. Checkbox, which is a checkbox, nothing more to it. Section is a heading that splits up the form template. So if I add that and I move this to here, that will allow it to be a split section. So you've got the top section and then you've got the next heading with the next section. Formulas, it's not commonly used from a perspective of creating your own unless you've got knowledge of code, but an easy example of a formula would be a calculation of 2 fields. So you could say value added into say another field which is referenced via these fields. So F11 would be the field we added earlier. That plus another field equals this particular one. Then you got signature. The signature is a signature field. So it'll prompt for a signature when you are on mobile. So that's all of the different field types. A lot of this is the imagination of what your current paper forms look like and knowing which option to choose, which would best capture the data you require. So once you've got your form happy, you would go back and that's where these other options come in. So info gives you the name of the template, so you can edit that if you need to. Prefix, when creating a form, the form has a name. If the prefix is hello1, then every single form created would be hello1 dash whatever the template name is. Owner is if you only want certain people to create the form, then you would list them in as owner. Not commonly used, roles typically sort that out, so you wouldn't generally have owner used very often. Links to is important in that you're picking which module you want the form to be created from. So if it's the company module, then they would go to a company record and to create the form from. Next form ID is just a count of forms added, and that will increment on every form created. Other one of importance is your group. So there's a list of groups that you can sort templates into. This is custom by database, so for this particular example, I will put this in the audit folder. Notify manager is on submission of the form. it is to notify certain people in the system. Archive after a number of days is once the form has been created. If I set a 30-day archive rule on this form template, once 30 days has passed since it has been created, it will be archived. That's info. Display has the concept of there is a default list of columns that every form will be bound to unless you've got it selected in list column. That means if I go to this form, then go to all, I've got name, links to, status, date, and owner. So if I go back to that template I was in before again, display, and I want to select date, question 1, employee name, and list of options. If I then go back to the form, if that was only created, it would have that selected. So I'll go ahead and quickly create a form. Then if I go back to all forms and find that template, you've got those columns sorted or added instead of the ones that were there by default. That's what that setting does. So if I go back to here, back to my template, workflow works differently in that a workflow is added when there is a follow-up required on a form. So a common example is approval. Awaiting approval, and then approved. And then the next one would be approved. So what this means is when the form is very first created, it'll be in draft. Once it's submitted, it will go into awaiting approval. Once it's in awaiting approval, that will then be assigned to particular people or particular roles to progress it to the next step. Once you've got workflow in place, you then have the option on these fields to have which workflow state the fields are editable within. So if I go to awaiting approval for this particular one, duration will only show when the form is submitted. If I select all, it will show in all workflow states. If it's by default in draft, once it's submitted, it's not editable in the next step. So different scenarios may have different needs. So going back, scripting will give you the option to add code. If you are wanting, say, a form to do something on creation, that would be where code would need to be entered for this. If you wanted to do something when the form is edited in a particular field, add that. And then if the form was rejected, you would put code in here, which is where you put code there. Once the form is rejected, it will run this code. Again, not commonly used unless you know what you're doing. Then you've got other sections which will be able to be configured for slight changes in things. So if I go to export PDF, that's where I'll be able to select some custom requirements. I won't go through all of these, but if you're interested, reach out. Same thing applies to export Excel. Same thing applies with custom PDF template. There's an option within here, instead of using the default PDF export layout, to add your own layout. The custom email is where you would be putting together a default templated email that every time a form using this template is created and sent to somebody who needs to receive the form, you would put in a standard subject and a standard message. Again, you can put placeholders in so you can reference email name. So if I put hi employee name, that will reference when it puts together the sample text, it will replace F2 with the first name added into the form. Beyond that, you've got dashboard, which again, code, wouldn't recommend unless you know what you're doing, having a look in that. And then sharing is a concept which is, I want to make this form public, and anybody, regardless of whether you've got to log into the system, needs to fill out this form. They will be able to click on this URL and it will open it up. So If I click on that, it will open up the form in a separate view, have a submit button, etc. That will just allow for external people to be able to fill out the form, commonly used for, say, a client feedback form. You've also got the option to, on submission of a public form, send an email to a particular person. Then there is integration, which is if you wanted to pull it into a BI tool, you will be using this to essentially import the data. If you've got any questions, feel free to contact me.